So we're here at the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs' bookstore, Middle East Books and More in Washington, D.C., with author Grant Smith to discuss his new book, The Israel Lobby Enters State Government, Rise of the Virginia-Israel Advisory Board. And our subscribers are able to capture a glimpse of the book in our last two issues, the October and November-December issue. And they got really great feedback, so we figured we'd invite Grant in to elaborate more on his book. So maybe you could just start, Grant, by telling us about what the Virginia-Israel Advisory Board is and why it's important.
Sure. Thanks, Dale. The Virginia-Israel Advisory Board is worth an entire book worth of case studies because it is an example, an unprecedented example of the Israel lobby, which we normally associate with groups like the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. But the Israel lobby at the state level actually migrating from being an outside group, lobbying government, to actually being part of the government. And so the Virginia Israel Advisory Board was an initiative of Eric Cantor when he was in the state assembly, who put together a group of Israel activists to set up an office inside the governor's office in 1996 and begin lobbying inside government. They had their own budget, they had an executive director, and they managed to have a charter that mandated that the heads of local Jewish federations from around the state, who themselves have budgets of up to $30 million per year, actually be represented in this board. So it's a phenomenal development in terms of looking at what they've been doing over the past years and how their operations have been impacting particularly the economy of Virginia, but also the entire lobbying ecosystem.
Great. So there's two companies here that are a key part of the story.
Right.
Energix and Alani Hetz. Can you tell us a little about who they are and what their role in this is?
Sure. Well, VIAB puts together codename projects because they don't want to divulge who the companies behind some of their economic initiatives are. And so Alani Hetz is a very large real estate concern in Israel that unfortunately has extensive developments in the settlement of Ariel, in the West Bank, and is putting together real estate projects now in the United States. They have an office in Alexandria, Virginia. Alani Hetz happens to own an Israeli solar energy company called Energix. And Energix is involved in the Golan Heights doing wind farms. It's had numerous run-ins with Druze groups and Palestinian groups as well. And so these are two Israeli companies that not only are relying on the Virginia Israel Advisory Board for entree into the Virginia market, but they have some ties that they probably want to hide behind in order to do business in Virginia. And that's really the subject of the magazine excerpt that you're just publishing about their front operations.
And so there's another component to this, the Tobacco Commission down in Virginia. And what's their role in all this?
Well, I'm so glad you asked me. So everybody knows there was a huge settlement with the tobacco companies over liability for health concerns, and Virginia got a chunk of the lawsuit settlement money. Like a lot of other states, they're not using it to confront smoker cessation programs or things like that. They've actually put it into a regional development fund, which has the unfortunate acronym of the TROF, the Tobacco Reinvestment Opportunity Fund, or the Tobacco Region Opportunity Fund, I'm sorry. And so this pile of money has been an opportunity for Israeli companies to get funding to start up operations in the state. And so what the Virginia Israel Advisory Board has done is effectively presented these codename projects, and this one's called Project Turbine, presented these to the Tobacco Commission for funding. Now, the Tobacco Commission in Virginia has distributed over $1 billion worth of grants. So this is real money we're talking about. And Energix and Ohlone Hetz have been interested in getting some of that funding to build out solar projects. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're going to the trough because that is something the Virginia-Israel Advisory Board is expert at. Getting Israeli companies, the only type of company they work for, to get these public funds to build out their businesses.
Great. And so let's get into a case study here now. There's the name of a school here, Hamilton Holmes Middle School, and a deal was reached with them for solar panels.
Exactly.
Explain what's going on there and why perhaps the taxpayers are
not
getting the short end of the stick with this one.
Well, yeah, there's actually local opposition now down there. So this is King William's public school system. And upon referral of another client who doesn't actually know he's a client of Energix and Ohlone Hetz, was recommended to work with a new company that suddenly appeared on the scene, but is actually the front for these two entities. And the front company is called SunTribe Solar. SunTribe Solar has signed a contract with King William's County Public Schools, and in the case of Hamilton Holmes Middle School, has gotten them to sign a contract where they sign away 30 years worth of rights to a large plot of land next to their school to build out a solar array. And under the terms of the contract, which we obtained through the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, we've discovered that this particular solar array is going to generate 4 times as much power as the school needs. So basically, they have created for themselves, for Ohlone Hetz and Energix, a project with a net present value of $3 million. The school is only getting a small discount on electricity that they'll be buying from the solar array. And for a school system, the interesting thing is the environmental impact. They'll be clear cutting a stand of trees to put it up. And local environmental groups are asking questions that they cannot answer. So beyond whether they want to be indirectly involved with Israeli settlement companies, they have this whole issue of what's going to happen to recycle the solar panels, which unfortunately have a lot of toxic materials in them. Do they really want to clear cut a stand of forest and treat it with chemicals to keep the plants from overtaking the solar panels? Do they really want to be on the hook for this project if the front company goes down or enters financial difficulties, which has happened? So local environment groups have put these questions to the school superintendent who signed the deal, Dr. White. He in turn has turned to SunTribe. They haven't been able to answer any of these questions. And this is even before the issue over ultimate beneficial owners in Israel has come up. So it's a really interesting story.
Yeah. So I guess elaborate on what are people doing? You mentioned there's some opposition.
Right. Well, there's local opposition from a group that's 25 miles to the north of this in the Tidewater region. They're concerned because they're concerned that solar arrays are going to impact the tourism development and maybe take farmland away from that use. But on the broader state side, I have to say that one of the key coalitions of groups, the Virginia Coalition for Human Rights, has gotten involved in confronting the Virginia Israel Advisory Board. They have been showing up at budget meetings. They have been showing up with studies and speaking about whether the state should be funding a development agency that's 100% devoted to Israeli companies and not devoted to indigenous Virginia companies. And so the Virginia Coalition for Human Rights is a very interesting case of grassroots opposition, where they're going into the legislature and they are saying to delegates, we would like you to withdraw your support for a VIAB or Federation bill. And they've actually gotten that to happen. For example, the Federation's backing VIAB, put forth an anti-boycott, divestment, and sanctions law that VCHR successfully lobbied against. And so while they managed to pass a non-binding resolution, this group has effectively been able to, from the grassroots, by motivating their 8,000 members, actually push back against PIAB and their backers. And another thing that they've done, which I thought was quite intelligent, was to put out a poll of Virginia adults saying, do you think the state should be funding an entity that is 100% devoted to bringing in Israeli companies when we already have a $500 million trade deficit with that country? Is that a good use of state resources? And they found out that a plurality of Virginians said, no, that's not a very good use of state funds.
Great. So I guess before we wrap up, if you just want to tell us a little more about your book, which has just got released this week.
Sure.
And why it's important for the average American to read this book.
Absolutely, Dale. I think the most important thing about this book is that it brings together an entire chapter-by-chapter look at what the VIAB has been doing in Virginia versus what they say they've been doing in there. And it presents an analysis of the type of organization it really is and the questions it raises in terms of a public policy standpoint. So the Israel lobby enters state government, rise of the Virginia Israel Advisory Board is really about an entirely new stage in Israel lobbying in this country that could have a huge impact if the model begins migrating into other states. So that's why I think it's important that these excerpts have gone out now of 2 chapters in the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs, and that the book is launching right now in November.
Great. Well, we certainly encourage everyone to buy it. You'll see a link below this video to buy the book. And of course, we always encourage you to visit Grant's website, irmep.org. Institute for Research in Middle Eastern Policy does great work, great archives, and bold investigations. So, Grant, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for having me.